Making Southern Songs and Stories podcasts is usually a solo endeavor. Outside of my face-to-face interviews with artists, most of the time producing an episode is off in my own corner. Hours spent reading, researching, thinking, and writing, and then the final stretch of solitude in a soundproof studio, recording a voiceover, arranging all the pieces of the interview and inserting music excerpts before mixing it all down, and eventually sharing it with you in podcast land, as well as on the radio. Our guest in this episode, Sally Ann Morgan, has a similar creative process, as you will hear. But Sally Ann also brings in collaborators, and every once in a while, I'm lucky to do so as well. In recent episodes, you may recall my mention of WNCW intern Elena Dickson. Now, Elena gets to sit in the driver's seat, and it's a perfect time because her senior thesis focuses on traditional storytelling techniques in the Appalachian region with an emphasis on its cultural ties to the natural world and radio's role in spreading traditional cultures in the region and to the outside world. The synergy between Elena's field of study and Sally Ann Morgan's background and music was impossible to miss, so we decided that Elena should write and host this episode. You're listening to Sally Ann Morgan now, with her song I Is the First from her 2025 album Second Circle the Horizon, a captivating collection of instrumentals released on the Chicago-based label Thrill Jockey. I'm Joe Kendrick, inviting you to get to know Elena Dickson and our guest, Sally Ann Morgan, here on Southern Songs and Stories. Southern Songs and Stories is a proud part of the lineup at both Public Radio WNCW and Osiris Media, the leading storyteller in music. Follow Southern Songs and Stories wherever you follow podcasts, with more at southernsongsandstories.com. You can engage with us on social media. Southern Songs and Stories is on Facebook at Southern Songs and Stories, on Instagram at South Stories, and my YouTube channel is Joe Kendrick NC.
As people found new ground to plant their roots in the 18th century, musicians found themselves neighboring others with instruments they had never heard of. Old-time music, gaining commercial popularity in the early 20th century, brought elements from all over the globe and across many different cultures and regions. It was the sound of progressivism in communities built on migration. As technology in the music industry evolved, allowing artists to record and sell their work, the label Old Time was created to describe old familiar fiddle tunes, ballads, and other folk music from history. With its historical roots and initial popularity before the recording and producing technology that allowed music to enter spaces it had never reached before, well-versed fans and even some musicians can feel the clearly defined rules and regulations of old-time music. Commonly mistaken for the other, bluegrass differentiated itself through its improvised solos, making it music for performance, while old-time music was for social gatherings like dances. It makes me wonder, has the labeling of old time limited modern musicians from adding to its discography? Does our access to new technology push contemporary old-time music to new evolutions, or does implementing these technologies nullify new additions to the genre? Old-time music is rooted in the everyman, but does that definition change as the circumstance and access of the everyman changes? When I listen to old-time music, it is often when I'm trying to add the finishing touches on a paper. There's something about the details hidden in fiddle melodies and banjo rolls that makes me see how I should lay out my argument or tell my story. I almost ground myself from traditional elements so I can use them as a foundation to make something new and thought-provoking. Using traditional elements in their contemporary counterparts, like oral storytelling techniques and academic essays, can bridge the perceived distance between a culture that once was and what it has now become, preserving the tradition while simultaneously modernizing and pushing the craft forward. Sally Ann Morgan, North Carolina-based musician, artist, and mother, exists on this precarious boundary between the old and the new, bringing her roots in traditional music with her as she engages with the ever-changing world we live in today. Joe Kendrick and I picked Sally's brain on the relationship between the eccentricity of nature and being human at her home in Alexander, North Carolina. Ensconced along the mountains and the French Broad River just outside Asheville, the location allows her to remain unchanged from unnatural elements while still giving opportunity to change her music, her perception, and ultimately the community around her. We talked about her organic influences, what defines old-time music, the impact of human connection, and so much more. I'm your host, Elena Dickson, welcoming you to Southern Songs and Stories with Sally Ann Morgan. We sat in a circle in her letterpress studio, boxes filled with prints, scraps of paper, and practice sheets, and her child's artwork lined the walls around us. Her dog, Barney, who is at least 100 pounds, sat next to me and let me scratch his ears, and his back, and his belly. But before getting down to business, I had the opportunity to help her weed her garden and see a little bit of the scenery that inspires her music. She showed me wool that she had sheared and how she tricks her toddler into pitching in with the yard work, and a yard that I would say could give her the title of Mountain Martha Stewart if Martha Stewart was interested in homesteading.
We have about 4 acres, and we have some sheep. We have a donkey. We have chickens and a big garden. And yeah, we love it out here.
Yeah, it's very picturesque, and I love the flowers and what little I've seen of it so far.
Well, June is the best month because nothing is like overrun yet, but everything's just like full on green and full of life, I think.
Sally's ability to bring the natural into the recording booth reverberates through her recent albums, Carrying, released in 2023, and her newest, Second Circle, The Horizon. In a quote about her album, she said she wanted to capture the feeling of walking outside and encountering organic nature sounds, some with patterns, some with a randomness that also verges on its own kind of pattern.
Yeah, I guess that's my way of like saying that I wanted, there's like this organic feeling to my music that I feel is very reminiscent to just being outside. I'm not recording field recordings of nature. But I like, for example, in the banjo, like I'm not playing like a rhythmic claw hammer. A lot of the times it's more like, I don't know, to me, it's like rain falling or something that's like, not, to a grid. It's not like a regular rhythm, but it's just got this like round, nature-y, organic thing.
If you think the title sounds familiar, you may be recalling the transcendentalist movement in your old literature classes.
I am an Emerson fan, although I say that, I'm not like, I haven't read all that much, and I probably, I'm not like as educated as probably anyone who's taken any college class on English would be. But yeah, the title comes from an essay on circles that a friend sent to me kind of after my last record, Carrying, where I was saying like one of the big themes, everything just seemed like a circular, like the theme was circles. And I still feel that way. And like, I mean, when you start to see circles and everything, like nothing is not a circle. Even a line becomes a circle, but, so one of the lines from that essay is the eye is the first circle, the horizon it sees is the second.
The circularity and rhythmic philosophies go past giving meaning and depth to her music, grounding her in seasonality and keeping her attuned with everything going on around her. From motherhood to being a full-time artist, the inevitable chaos becomes less overwhelming as she reconnects with the cycles repeating around her.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and I actually have a background in geology. I studied that in college, and so I feel like sometimes when I just start thinking about deep time and how much the earth has changed over the billions of years it's been here, and like it is change. So it is still just like deeply like human music that really touches people, I think, because of just how good it is.
This organic exploration of music and her unique approach is a result from her long history in the old-time tradition. While she practiced traditional fiddle tunes for over 10 years and explored ballad singing, it didn't always feel like a place where she could explore the genre in unorthodox ways, almost like she was being confined.
It started to feel like, oh, if I want to learn more tunes, I just have to study them. It just felt like homework to have to like study. And I stopped wanting to do that.
Even in hitting a rut, all hope was not lost. Her label, Thrill Jockey, forged the connection that would propel Sally into success.
Thrill Jockey is the label I've been on for a number of releases now, and I feel incredibly lucky that they have supported me and like trust me with my vision. The Black Twig Pickers had a record out on Thrill Jockey. That's how I kind of got my foot in the door, and I've gotten to know Bettina, who runs the label, and she's like such a, I don't know, I just idolize her, honestly.
The Black Twig Pickers brought an end to her confinement, broadening her horizons and showing her how to push the boundaries of the genre.
I was playing in this band, the Black Twig Pickers. I still play with them. And they also have like a different approach where, you know, I think in the traditional music world, there are people who are just super narrowly fixated or focused on that. But these guys were like talking about Terry Riley and, you know, John Coltrane and like Harry Flint and just and Mike Gangloff, who is the, you know, one of the founding members, the other fiddle player, plays in Pelt, and they were like opening for Sonic Youth in the 90s. So there was just this different perspective that I was slowly drawn into. And so when, you know, when I was getting into ballads, there was like always, you know, we didn't want to just be straight up treating it like a like an archived tradition, but treating it like something alive and making it, I mean, to say experimental seems a little too easy also, because we're not like, oh, how can we make this experimental?
As she worked with other artists and explored what the genre meant to her with new bounds, Sally found what she believes to define the music she creates: humanity.
I think old-time music is like psychedelic music, in that it is just trancey. And, you know, sometimes like players like kind of smooth that out now, to its detriment, I think. But yeah, or like, I mean, I think this is kind of just across the board with humanity. Like there's like hollering music from like all over the world that if you were to play it to someone born in the past 30 years who's like never heard something that's not been like music that's not like snapped to a grid, they wouldn't know what to do with it. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's just, we're just freaky.
Sally sees the beauty within the place her music journey brought her. Here's Joe Kendrick talking with her about the relationships and joyful moments she carries that led her to this place.
Thinking about that sort of magical trance or whatever the je ne sais quoi about some old time music reminds me of a conversation that I had with Jeb Puryear of Dawn of the Buffalo, and he was talking about how you kind of lock in together, and I don't know how he described it exactly, maybe kind of like a feedback loop, but he was talking about making heat, and you get into that groove, and it's the same groove, and you just keep with that same groove.
Yeah, I like that. I definitely, it's all about energy, and I think there's like energy currents in the air that we have no idea like exist, but there's something really magical that can happen. And this record was mostly me like recording it myself in a room, overdubbing myself, so I didn't play with other people. And that's something I, thinking back to the Black Twig Pickers, like I do, like that's more like, there's something lost and something gained, I guess, when you're like doing something alone by yourself. I needed that at the time. Like that's, I think, what I just needed to get out of my system somehow. But yeah.
While most of the tracks on Circles were initially recorded without other collaborators, Sally brought in other artists to the final versions, including synthesizer player Sean Dunlap and Brian the geologist on the hurdy-gurdy. That's right, the hurdy-gurdy. This string instrument, popular in the Baroque era, produces sound from a rosined wheel rubbing against the string, similar to a violin's bow. But instead of a bow, a crank-operated wheel rubs against the strings to create their own otherworldly sound.
Have always since the first time I heard the hurdy-gurdy ever played, I just remember being like, what is that sound? It was not in the room. It was like someone had brought it to a fiddler's convention, and it sounded like an electronic instrument to me. Like it has this crazy sound that it's like medieval though. So when I found out that Brian played the hurdy-gurdy, I was just like really into it, and I talked to him about it, and he's like, oh, he was like, had said he liked Cups, my previous instrumental record or cassette, and so he said he would contribute some hurdy-gurdy.
Even in the singular nature of the record's creation, Sally is reconnecting with the community-based traditions she dug her roots into in old-time music. On June 20th, she and her band played at Rare Bird Farm, celebrating a lightning bug festival and the release of her album. So
back to my journey, where I just come back around to everything. Now I'm back around to playing with a band. So I will have my husband playing along with me. I was like, you have to play this banjo lick over and over again and just pretend you're a robot. And then I'm like, okay, now you play this on the electric guitar over and over again, and just like, don't listen to anyone else, because I want to be able to like play off of you. Luckily he's a great musician and he's up for that. And then I have a friend who's going to play upright bass, and someone playing drums, and then someone playing viola / lap steel. So we'll be playing songs from my previous record, Carrying, which did have like words, and then some of these new instrumentals as well. And turns out it's also fun doing it in a band.
What else is on the near horizon? What do you want to get out of this record?
Gosh, I think the big rediscovery for me with this record is the playing in the band, because I had thought maybe I'll get a sampler and figure out how to use that. So it's already been huge just to rediscover my love of being in a band with people. I wish I could play more, but we have 2 little kids, like a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So it's hard for me to leave, never mind both me and my husband. We make it work, but it's difficult. So that said, yeah, I could see a handful of other shows this summer if they fall into my lap. I'm not really at seeking things out, but if someone approaches me and it seems like it will work, I usually say yes.
Even as she prepares to perform the new release, nothing compares to the air of the Appalachian Mountains. Despite residing in the region for over 20 years, Sally Ann Morgan honors her Northern Virginia upbringing in a way that brings nuance to the perspective of her environment.
Being originally from outside the region, I bet you have some great insight into Appalachian culture and identity. Also, now that you've been here long enough that you could experience it from being a resident.
I don't know. I feel like for everything I learn, there's the opposite experience also happens. I think one thing getting into traditional music has taught me is that, and I will say I do think there is something really magical about the mountains around here, energetically. However, everywhere is equally old and everyone is equally old. We're all there's exciting old time music from Arizona, and it's all meshed together and mixed together. So
Sally's approach to old time music bodes well for new generations and trailblazers to come and transform the music.
We just went to a Mount Airy Fiddlers Convention in Surrey County. It's been going on for over 50 years. And, there's young kids there now who are just whizzes on the fiddle, but they learn it all from YouTube. And it's that's cool too. I don't know. I just don't think there are rules, and nor should there be any.
That's one thing I think that speaks well about the future of roots music, like string band music, is that there are so many young kids coming up in the tradition, and they're good, and these musics don't need amplification, so you don't need a lot of gear, etc. Yeah. And there's an active community fostering these traditions, and knee to knee, just always passing it down to the next generation. That seems to keep it very vital.
Yeah, totally. It's so vibrant and it's so alive. And I think it's when people try to start treating it like it belongs in a museum, that's what kind of gets to me. And yeah, I think in some ways, this record of mine is an extension of old time music, if people are open-minded enough. And at least one song on it is Callahan is from a fiddle tune.
Ending with Callahan, you can hear Sean Dunlap's synthesizer and Joseph Deschernet's bass echoing in the background, giving the song more of a dramatic arc than the lush scene depicted in I Saw a Heron. Callahan makes me feel like I'm following a journey similar to the protagonists in The Secret of the Kells or Over the Garden Wall, 2 pieces of media that I grew up with depicting young travelers on journeys in unknown places. As other instruments are introduced, you feel like you are finding others in the forest on your path, ending with an entanglement of all three instruments after a solitary violin beginning to show the relationships that can develop between strangers traveling the same uncertain path. Sally Ann Morgan continues to bridge the history of old-time music into the modern era, showing us what using traditional elements can mean as the original circumstances they were made in are long gone. Treating music as a living art form rather than an archive of specific elements makes the connection between musicians, listeners, and the world around us so much deeper. Did you know there are more than 150 episodes of Southern Songs and Stories available anytime for free, anywhere you find podcasts? It's true. They also have a home on our website, southernsongsandstories.com, where there are many more articles and photos to go along with these episodes. You can follow us on social media at South Stories on Instagram, at Southern Songs and Stories on Facebook, and you can view these episodes and a lot more on Joe's YouTube channel at the handle Joe Kendrick NC. Like to read? We're now on Substack, where you can read the scripts of these podcasts and get updates on what we are doing and planning in our quest to explore and celebrate the unfolding history and culture of music rooted in the American South, and going beyond to the styles and artists that it inspired and informed. This series is part of the lineup of both public radio WNCW and Osiris Media, with all of the Osiris shows available at www.osirispod.com. You can also hear new episodes on Bluegrass Planet Radio at www.bluegrassplanetradio.com. Thanks to Jacqueline Anthony for producing the radio adaptations of this series on public radio WNCW, where we worked with Joshua Meng, who wrote and performed our theme songs, and Joe Kendrick for guiding me through the productions of this episode. I'm your host and producer, Elena Dickson, and this is Southern Songs and Stories, the music of the South and the artists who make it.